Hello friends, my name is Koolio and welcome back to the channel. Today guys, I'm going to be sharing with you my top 5 list for the top 5 most underrated hero collector games on the mobile platform. Now, a lot of these games on this list are put on there due to my own personal preference, but I also believe that these games deserve more recognition and recommendation for a lot of players out there. These are games that maybe just don't have the massive population or player bases as some of these other games, not saying that they don't have their own dedicated player bases, but deserve a little bit more time in the spotlight. Now I'm going to go through and share all these games with you and let me know your guys' thoughts on each of these games, as well as if there's any games that you guys like that you think deserve a little bit more time in the spotlight, a little bit more recognition. So let's go ahead and get started with the first one, which is Kingdom of Hero Tactics War. Now this game is definitely put on here due to my own personal preference. I actually really like this game. It's got a tactical grid-based combat system and a pretty unique and beautiful art style to its characters. However, the reason why I put this so far, so bottom on the list, number 5 spot, is because unfortunately, I believe the developers have kind of given up on the game. Now, they released a recent game called, I believe, Clash of Knights, which basically uses all of the art assets from Kingdom of Hero Tactics Wars and just rehashes them for a new game, which kind of leads me to believe that they've given up on this pretty fun and distinct tactical grid-based combat game that I personally really enjoy, and I want more people to kind of try it out. Now, I think one of the other reasons why it doesn't have the biggest population or the biggest player base is because the game isn't officially global. It is available in English in some countries, but not in the West, and I'm hoping the more people know about the game, hopefully we can get some attention out there so the developers are willing to release the game here in the West. Okay, now coming in at number 4, I have PhantomGate: The Last Valkyrie. Now this game is pretty unique compared to a lot of other hero collector games, and the main thing that makes it stand out from the other games in the genre is its platforming adventure mode, where basically you take your character moving through these platforming maps, overcoming challenges, finding puzzles, hidden layers and hidden areas, treasures, collecting items and power-ups and things like that. And overall, it's a pretty unique way to go through a story campaign compared to just basically going through one stage, the next stage, and the next stage, but actually have a fun and unique adventure mode. Now, on top of the platforming gameplay, we also have beautiful, distinct polygonal vector-based graphics that definitely catch the eye compared to a lot of other games that look really beautiful but simple at the same time. As well, when it comes to its heroes, it offers a branching evolution system where one single character can actually branch out into multiple different characters depending on how you want to evolve them, depending on how you want to use them. This is a game that I think is probably the most unique one on this list due to the fact of that platforming gameplay, which just adds just a lot to the genre compared to a lot of the other games. So that is it for number 4, PhantomGate: The Last Valkyrie. At number 3, we have Star Ocean Anamnesis, which I always feel like I'm saying that name wrong, but I think the reason why this game deserves more attention, and it might not be getting a whole lot due to the fact that the game did release like 2 years ago over in the East and just released last year over in the West, but this game deserves more attention for the fact that it brings like console quality graphics to the mobile platform, along with real-time action combat and real-time co-op gameplay where you can jump into dungeons, boss battles, raids and stuff with other players in real time and fight these different bosses. On top of that, since it's been out in the East for such a long time and finally came over to the West last year, it's got a long lifespan of content. And I swear, every once in a while when I decide to hop on to Reddit forums and on YouTube and things like that and look up Star Ocean, they end up having a new update. They recently had one with Nier Automata. I think I said that wrong, probably whatever, but they did a collaboration with that. They just had another major update coming out soon. This is a game that is kind of flying underneath a lot of people's radar, but despite that, it's still chugging along. It still has a decent player base. I just believe it deserves a little bit more attention. And because it has consistent updates, I think it'll bring a lot of people to stick with the game if they just give it a try. And I know they play it in a vertical and instead of landscape, and that might draw some people away from it, and it can get pretty hectic. But once you actually get into the game and get into those higher levels where you can't just basically use auto combat, but you actually have to pay attention to what's happening, it gets a lot of fun and it gets pretty crazy and pretty wacky, especially when you're playing with other characters. And so that is it for number 3, Star Ocean Anamnesis. Coming in at number 2, we have Man or Vampire. This game is really, really unique compared to a lot of hero collector games. Basically, you play as humans that are in a afterlife or a purgatory system where you're going through, you're trying to survive, but if your characters die, there is permadeath. Now that might draw some people away, and it's kind of an interesting permadeath, and I put air quotes around that because when I was playing it and I was going through some hard dungeons, I had accidentally left it on autoplay and I decided to do a little bit too hard of a difficult dungeon, and when I came back, one of my most powerful characters had died due to a massive boss fight that just came out of nowhere, and it was going to take like a week or so to resurrect the character, though they do give you enough premium currency that you can go through and resurrect a character instantly if you don't want to wait that long. But just that little notion of permadeath really adds tension to the game that isn't in any other hero collector game. You collect your heroes in other games, you play through if they die, who cares? But in this game, it makes you actually care about your characters and how you develop them, how you grow them, how you power them up to make sure that they don't end up dying when you go through a level. And on top of that, even though they do have autoplay, because of that permadeath, when you start getting into higher tier combat areas, you really do need to pay attention. And their combat is interesting because it takes you into these open world, dynamically, randomly generated dungeons that also use a streamlined grid-based combat system that I've never actually seen in a game before, where basically depending on where you move your character will activate either basic attacks, special abilities, or ultimates, which I think is a really, really good way to streamline the combat system for a game like this. And I really, really like that style of gameplay, the grid base, but it mixes it in with a sort of Diablo-esque randomly generated dungeons. Now on top of that, they have a really unique system when it comes to PvP. Now in a lot of other games, when you finally hit a certain level threshold, PvP unlocks, and you can begin jumping into it and trying to take down other people, leveling up your characters as you go along, slowly ranking up. However, in this game, if you want to dominate in PvP, you have to upgrade and level your characters first, and then turn them into a vampire. And when you turn them into a vampire, it stops their progression. You can no longer level them up, they no longer gain experience, you can give them better equipment, things like that. However, it makes you really think, okay, do I want to level this character up, max him out before I go into PvP, or do I want to use it right now? Do I want to turn him into a vampire now and maybe not use him later in the normal PvE stages? It makes you really think about how you develop your characters and the whole man or vampire system. Everything in this game just kind of screams hardcore. So if you're a gamer looking for a hardcore game, then Man or Vampire is the game for you. Okay, now coming in at number 1, we have Sdorica Sunset. I actually really, really like this game. This is a game I just recently downloaded and started playing again because I just absolutely love the art style. And when I mean by art style, I mean the whole overall presentation, where it's almost like watching or playing through a children's book, but at the same time you have these beautiful hand-drawn character designs. But I will say the one thing that might turn people off, and it did turn me off at first, is the combat chibi art style sort of for the characters when you actually take them into gameplay, as opposed to their beautiful hand-drawn character portraits. That might be one thing that might tear some people away from the game, but after a while, you kind of get used to it and it actually begins to look even more beautiful on top of that. But yeah, the main reason why I put this game on the list is for its overall presentation and its fair free-to-play model. Like, I actually really like the summoning process in the game, leveling up your characters, and a lot of the characters in the game are actually pretty viable simply just by playing through the story. The game has a really large emphasis to the story, and that's the next point I want to talk about, is this game has a well thought out and intriguing story that's also translated well. There's a lot of games that come over from the East here to the West, they translate them by throwing it through Google Translate, and it just looks terrible. But this one, they actually took time, they thought about the story, they wanted us to be able to experience it for ourselves, and like I said, it goes through that kind of children's animated storybook, which I really like. Now on top of that, the beautiful art style, the intriguing story, they have a interesting combat system, which again might turn some people off, but it's kind of a puzzle-based combat system where you have to connect energy together, and depending on how you connect them together, it will activate certain abilities. but it also leads you to believe and also leads you to think about maybe 3 steps ahead. Do I want to activate this ability now, have these further abilities activate a little bit later? Do I want to use a healing ability now, but then end up not being able to use a powerful attack ability from one of my other characters? It's an interesting combat system that some people, it might draw them away from it, but I actually think it's pretty intriguing once you actually get to dive into the combat system to see how it actually works. So there you go, guys. That is my top 5 list for the most underrated hero collector RPG games on the mobile platform. Let me know your guys' thoughts on this list. And like I said, if there's any games that you guys believe deserve more recognition, more time in the spotlight, let me know down below, and I might be able to make a first look impressions video of it, or maybe a second look impressions video to see if the game's still worth playing here in 2019. Now, if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to stay up to date in the latest in mobile gaming. All right, friends, I'll see you next time.